And the person that I'm about to present founded one of the first and also most successful local tango communities that also had an international outreach in Europe in the 20th century, which means in the 90s already. And I had the privilege and the chance to have my first tango classes at his school when I was living in the Netherlands. And Eric, my first teacher, he created a place in the Netherlands that was both a local community that still exists and is still thriving, that was also the hub for teaching the first generation of Dutch tango teachers that then went on to create their own schools everywhere in the Netherlands. He was behind the first European tango marathon, and marathon actually as a concept, and in those days we danced non-stop. Yeah, now you are all weaklings, you need to sleep. We danced till we dropped, literally right there on the dance floor. And what was so amazing is that not only was it a local community, but people who came for the chain salon weekends and the tango marathon, New Year tango marathon, were in themselves an international community touched by the grace of El Corte. So there was something, and still is, because I know people who still go to El Corte, there Eric has managed to create something truly magical that touched you the moment you walked into the space. And I remember the first moment I walked into the space and I was like, something is very special going here. And when I say touched by grace, I'm one of those people that was touched by that grace in my very first beginning times. And I always carry it with me. And when I teach, I still think of the classes that Eric was giving, because he always managed to also bring that magic in his classes. And the community is still thriving, and Eric is still teaching. And I'm so happy to have him with us. Please.
Is it my turn? Okay, you see the blushes on my cheeks. And do you hear me? Yes. Yes, fantastic. Do you see me as well? I have no clue. Yes, fantastic. My name is Eric Jørissen. Not everybody knows me. I don't know everybody I see. But my name is Eric Jørissen. It's a Dutch name, although my family comes from Scandinavia and my blood is Argentinian. No, that's not true. I love dancing, and I started dancing in the 70s. It's a long time ago now. And even the introduction of Veronica makes me feel a little older now. And I realize I have a lot to say because I started my tango experience 50 years ago by starting dance in general. And then you have to imagine that I was a younger guy. I was about 12 years old, and my parents loved to dance. I'm talking about the mid-70s. And when I went out with my parents, together with the group of children who already danced the ballroom dances, I saw an entirely different dance. My parents danced more like the milongueros in Buenos Aires, because my parents started to dance in the 20s and 30s. I have very old parents. And there were no dance schools in the 20s and 30s, but there were dances. That was pretty much the only thing you could do. When you were young in the 20s and 30s, you could scarcely go to the movies if you had a movie theater in a smaller village, but everybody could dance and everybody could sing along with things. That was the entertainment. And you learned dancing not by going to a school, but by doing it, by learning it from your sister and brother and father maybe, but you did it. You didn't go first to 20 classes before you started to dance. And this is also how the dance was shaped. There were no people who said, this is right and this is wrong. That's the beginning of a lot of things that started somehow in the culture. This is also the thing that happened in Argentina. In the early days when tango developed, there was nobody who said it should be like this, it should be like that. Well, I was in the lucky circumstance that I saw my parents dancing in a completely different way than what I was taught by the teachers and my peer people, my peer children who learned to dance. They said, "Oh, look at these people. They cannot dance." Because what they saw was people who were a bit more intimate and not showing off, not sticking to steps, but improvising the whole time. And every couple I saw during that old dance scene in the 70s of people who never took classes was pretty much the same as what I encountered 20 years later in Buenos Aires. People who never took classes but loved to dance. And they shaped it from the inside out, not from the outside in. For me, that was an epiphany. I was only 13 years old when I saw that difference between how people thought it should be and how I felt it had to be. And this shaped my whole future in my life. I loved dancing at that moment. I knew when I was 15 years old that I wanted to become a dance teacher, although I had to go through the whole routine of visiting university because that's what my parents expected. I already knew deep down inside, I want to get back that feeling that I had when I watched my father and mother dance. Not a conventional thing of steps and shapes, but a real candid view on how you can shape the music according to you as a person. And I thought, wouldn't it be wonderful to have the love for the dance that I already have and create a thing around it that allows the freedom of shape? Not knowing that I would encounter tango, I was doing research in the 80s for all those standard or ballroom dances that I learned and loved, but I looked for the origins because every dance has an origin. The waltz in the German part, the tango in the Argentinian part, the foxtrot in the early English American part, all these original dances were completely different from what the ballroom world offered. So that was interesting for me. I wanted to know more about it. But you have to imagine, I don't feel old, but I was, of course, before the computer era. The era of computer made it much more accessible. But until the beginning of the 90s, we had to actually visit libraries, museums, archives to see what was going on in those early days of all these dances. And I tell you, Argentinian tango was not even to be found on the European continent. Maybe if you were lucky, you saw an old movie with some ideas. But even in movies, you get a different idea of tango than what actually happened in the social world. But I was in this very lucky circumstance that in the mid 80s, Argentina became an open democracy again. It took a while because it was really until the 90s that I still felt that there were very hostile moments in Argentina where people fought each other and that whole social structure was not ready yet to bloom and blossom. But I was there and I was very happy to see the origin of tango when I was looking for it. And I thought the moment I saw it, and I saw it by visiting Argentinian show people because that was the first thing to open up after the Falkland War and after the beginning of democracy. The first shows of tango came to Europe. Some of you know about them, some of you saw it, but now I feel very old because I don't think many of you saw it. Tango Argentino came to all the big cities, Amsterdam, London, Berlin, Paris. So that was the first touch of the real Argentinian tango. At least it was completely different from the ballroom. And I was very happy to see that. And I already saw this is show dancing. I love it. It's very different. But I want to see what the social dance behind it is. So I could connect to these people who danced in these shows. They could also teach. And I was in a very lucky time frame because there were only about 6 communities at that moment that started tango from that same or similar experience by connecting to these people from the show. And I was, I must say, the only one who asked these people, but how is the social dance? I don't want to copy the show. It's fantastic, all these flying legs. but I want to see how it works. And of course, a few of these show dancers also knew about the social dance, and they took me by the hand and introduced me to the social land. At that moment, tango arrived in Europe. It didn't arrive in Argentina, as a matter of fact, because there it was like a no-no still. But the dancers came to Europe, showed the dance in this flashy way, and a lot of my colleagues in Europe took over that flashy way of dancing, saying this is tango argentino. Well, the flashy way of dancing tango argentino is very accessible for people. When you see that the first time, it's like, wow, yes, that is what we want. But I already had imprinted in my mind that I wanted to have a social version of it. And I knew it. This is a dance that is not shaped by conventions. It's a dance that you can do in the shape you want to and improvising to the music the way you want to. It is exciting to see what the common denominator is. What is tango? It's very hard to describe, actually. It is a dance. It's a dance for people who want to share. It's not exclusively tango that is a sharing dance. Originally, any couple dance was a sharing dance. But tango is, of course, the dance where the art of sharing becomes the art of communication to the music together. And that's still that high standard that I want to preserve. But therefore, I had to find an entrance, find a social way of introducing that fantastic flashy tango to the world that needed some thinking because I was about, well, I was 24 when I started dancing tango and knowing this is what I want to build up. I want to build up a scene where this dance will be developed and growing on. So I thought I cannot just say this is how I see it because people are falling for all these big things. So I had to think about let's start with the bigger things so that people are teased into our world, which was not a world yet, by the way, and then gradually come to the essence and coming to subtlety. This is the right routine and the right trajectory, I guess, because you cannot start with subtle and end up with something else. You have to start with something clear and blunt, and then you grow into more subtle. That's more depth. This is a very natural thing. And I took time and I took patience. But I saw that the other communities in Europe at that moment were more focused on the step and flash dance. Had a lot of fun with it, but whenever we visit them as dancers, we felt already like, ooh, in a social context, this doesn't work. It hurts, literally, sometimes to share the space with the people. But instead of fighting it, because I thought I will never win, I just wanted to feed my community with subtlety, with allowing time to grow into deeper layers. Deeper is not better, but more subtle layers. And after 5 years, I saw the first good examples within my community that started to dance in a social way that I love to see. It's a personal thing because there's not a forbidden thing of doing flashy and bigger tango. And I always told the people when they said, hey, but this way is much better, I say, no, it's not better. It's your choice. Building a community comes from choices, not from conventions. And this is what for me is a very, very true story. I constantly check if I can answer the question why I do things. If I can't answer it, if I answer it yes because this is how it is, then there is something wrong with it. Then I want to think about how can I go deeper to reach the essence. So around that idea, I started a group of dancers with, of course, the bigger shapes. But within 1 year, I had 120 students. So I really had to think about how shall I organize this? This is not what I anticipated. I thought the tango would be a niche thing. In a way, it's still a niche thing, not to us, of course, but in the dance world, tango is not the biggest world, let's be honest. But it went big enough so that I could think of doing several days of classes And after 5 years, after 3 years, I rented a steady building, a permanent building, which in the context of other tango organizations was very early. We had in Berlin a school, Dietrich Lange. We had in Hamburg, Marie-Paul Renault. There was in Stuttgart, there was a school. It's a lot of German and Dutch based. There was a school in Zurich. And that was pretty much it. For the rest, it was all very small initiatives. But tango grew, we grew. Buenos Aires became accessible. It was very expensive during that time. And there was still no computer, so you couldn't easily link. The first time I went to Buenos Aires was in '89, I think, just before the '90s. And when I was looking for tango through my connections that I already had, the people said, no, 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 tango, it doesn't happen in Buenos Aires anymore. The taxi driver said, no, it's dead. It's not there. But I had the addresses, so I let them go to the addresses. One of these addresses was Salon Helénico, which is nowadays more known as Cani, which is now again closed as well. So I saw the whole cycle. But that was one of my first places where I danced the tango. Are we okay? Well, are you okay? Yes. And there I saw my first social dance because, of course, my teachers already explained about the social dance, but that was the first time I saw a group of people dancing the social dance, and I knew it. I'm on the right track. But I was at that moment the only one in Europe who offered tango in a more social way. The rest was more obsessed by the bigger things, which is natural. I was already a dancer. Just before I started dancing tango, I did my dance education at the Dance Conservatory. I was very interested in teaching, so that was my passion about how to communicate the dance. But of course, I love the dance as well. And there, that first time in Buenos Aires, I saw these old people, because this is sometimes an issue nowadays. Old people, only old people dancing this beautiful dance. 60, 70, 80, 90 dead. Everybody. And I had these conversations with 90 years or 95 years old people who already started dancing tango in the 20s. And they said, Eric, what you see now, that's not tango. And I mainly saw the style of the 40s. They said, this is tango. And then they showed more of a Kanjenga style. Even during those beginning revival days in Buenos Aires, people already told all these different stories. And I thought, okay, this is interesting. Because in the culture, they sometimes say this is wrong and this is right. But there was such a spectrum in tango that, again, I was so lucky to hear this that I decided I can maybe find my tango, but I will never judge somebody else's tango because there are so many tangos. This is how the tango reached the state we have today, because we allow all these different shapes. And it makes me sometimes sad when I hear in the tango world nowadays people who say, no, this is right and this is wrong. In the Argentinian culture, it's a game. If you say that, you're still open minded and know that, the other one from the other barrio, these are strangers, but we still love you. We just say that this is not the right form of tango. It's in Europe, we took it too seriously. We actually start fighting. Don't go to that place because they don't do the proper tango. I really think that this is the killing part of the tango community. In a community, you should make choices that you like. That's your choice, but do not make anybody else's choices. Feel that you're part of a bigger thing. We're always talking about connection, yet we don't want to connect to the others. Why? Why can't we just say, this is not my taste? I will go to the places where I have my food, but it's okay to have all these other things. Don't fight it, embrace it. Let's continue the story of Corte, because after renting the permanent place, which was a surprise for me, but I was in that very lucky time frame, still seeing that original tango. I opened my school. You know who opened my school, huh? Who inaugurated my school? That was Osvaldo Pugliese, because he was still alive. And it's amazing because when I tell this story now, people cannot believe it. Well, I tell you, I saw many of these people. We love to dance. and they were still alive. They were old, but they were still alive. And Oswaldo said, Eric, I want to do tango for dancers, but I haven't been allowed to do that for 60 years, since the 60s, I must say. Tango as a social thing was kind of forbidden in Buenos Aires because you couldn't have any congregation of people, but concerts were possible. And Pugliese continued doing concerts in theaters, but he never played for dancers. And because he still very productive as a musician, he produced a lot of tangos that were more dramatic because it was more meant to listening to. But he said, in my heart, I want to play for dancers. Eric, can you organize a salon? So that was my first salon with an Argentinian orchestra with Pugliese. We danced with Pugliese. And at the end of that milonga, well, we didn't even call the name milonga because that word came up in the 90s. At that baile, in that dance evening, Pugliese applauded us as much as we did after the whole concert because we danced to it and we listened to it. There was a very nice balance, and he had to cry, and the whole orchestra was for the first time like, wow, it's amazing. And he played again more of the early 40s music that is more accessible than all the dramatic time framed music of the later 70s and 80s. So that was interesting to see. People say, no, you can't dance to Pugliese. I say, no, 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 no. There is music, maybe more for dancers, and there's music more for listeners. There are people who are making lyrics in tango. We are a triangle together. We love the dance, but don't forget that it's a whole culture of music, dance, and lyrics. And that feeds each other. Now, in general, our community, the dance community, tends to turn back to the other two parts because the dance is prevalent. Well, that will be a pity. We have to continue including the music because if we only dance to canned music, we start predicting, anticipating too much of what we know already. And don't forget that whole tango developed around freedom of improvisation. You limit yourself a lot when you shape everything on forehand. So when I start my tango school, El Corte, let's go back to the past, I knew I want to offer classes. I want to take time before people can dance in a subtle way and getting rid of all that convention of tango and dancing in general is learning steps. And that took a long time, people. 10 years. If you ask people, just ignorant people, what is tango, then they always started to do things with their head and bigger European tango. Said, no, tango is originally from Argentina, and then we come with the whole story that we love to tell as well. But it took a long time before people realized that the tango in its origin is different. And you have to take time. You can't force it. You have to take time. After 3 years, I started to organize my first weekends because I come from a history as a student at university when I still studied biochemistry. I was already a member of a dance group, and we had a lot of fun in that dance group. It was not a shaping dance group and an achievement dance group. It was a fun social dance group, and we connected to other communities in other university cities. Groningen, Amsterdam, Leiden, all these Dutch cities. And we had such a lot of fun during the weekends that made me think if we offer dance, not only for 3 or 4 hours, because that was what all my colleagues did in the mid 90s, then we get beyond the point where people feel we have to show off. Even the most subtle, improvised people, this is how people work and function. When you come for the first time in a space and a group, even if you don't want it, you are aware of that new space and of that group. But the best dances happen when you're not aware of it, when you're starting to become one with everything, with the music, with your partner, with yourself, and with the space in the group. But knowing that, you have to also create it. I was in the position that I could create a community. I was in the pioneer phase. Nowadays, people have to maybe shift but I could start and create it. And I tell you, the majority at that moment of my colleagues wanted to create the structure of a ballroom school. So they wanted to come up with a program. In the first year, you have to do this and this and that. And then we do a judgment. And then we invite some Argentinians to hand out the certificates and all these things. And I thought, oh no, don't go that way. So that is what I actively fought, because I knew if you start doing it like that, you will attract more people. You will have more people if you create a very simple, easy thing. This is what you get. Then you will grow your community. But this is not the community I envisioned. So I thought, I have to start organizing moments together where all these other communities in Europe can meet. They cannot meet in a 4-hour salon. They cannot. You have to offer a longer time. And you prevent that nervous dancing and that showing off dancing, even if you don't want to, by extending that moment for dancing to 6 hours, to 7 hours, to even a whole weekend. Because then people do not just dance, but they connect on a different level. You need that context of a community by living your life as a community and not by just getting your drugs. That's a different type of community. So if you are willing, but you won't earn money, but if you're willing as an organizer to create more than just a dancers community, you have to put in your ideas, what it means to reach that what you want to see. Do not predict what it will be, because it will grow into the direction that you set up. Be ready to change, because times have changed. My community was a young community when we started. When I saw that the Eastern Europe countries started, that was 20 years later, a lot of people said, oh, but look, that is a much younger community. I said, yes, we also started as a young community, but we love it so much that we still dance when we're older. That's a compliment. You shouldn't see it as a disadvantage to have older people. I started by seeing all these 70, 80, 90-year-old people, and I loved it. But of course, if you want to have younger people, because this is a big issue, I know, the only way you can attract younger people is if you have a niche community to teach young people by young people, and then later on let them mix together again. That you cannot say, oh, let's get more young people to that old bunch of people. You have to do it from different levels. And I did it actively. I teach over the whole world. I started a lot of the communities, or I sparked it, I must say. I was involved with the beginning of London. I was the starter of the Tango in Malta. I was the starter of the Tango in Cape Town, where I partly live. I'm there in winter when Europe is woo. Okay. And I started it there, and there, even there, 20 years ago, when the people started dancing, they are still dancing and are loving it. And young people in Cape Town said, but they are too old. And I said to people, please, 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 young people, start doing your own tango thing and keep it for a year. Don't go to the other milongas. And they did. And now that young scene is starting to interconnect with the older scene, and it's completely rejuvenated. From two sides, they inspire each other. So for me, that would be one of the solutions. But enough of that, because I'm telling my history. The marathon and the weekend in Corte was meant to let people connect on several levels. People became friends, people started relationships, and they danced beautiful things, especially when they're starting to zombie into the night. Because Veronica already mentioned it, we went on until the last couple left. And that meant that sometimes we started on Saturday evening and we stopped Sunday afternoon. And there was no in-between break. That's why we called it a marathon. A marathon is not after 20 kilometers taking a sumptuous lunch and then continue your run. A marathon is actually starting somewhere and reaching the end, far away from there. So this is how we started it. And then these people still did that. It's amazing. I also could do it without any sleep. Huh? I mean, but it's amazing how many people were so drugged almost, but they reached different levels of dance that we love to see. And I love to do. But that isn't the true tango. It's my idea, and I see the benefit of it, and I love it. But there are also people who say, no, let me dance the 2 3 hours with the basic material, and we have fun, we drink a beer, and that's my tango. That's fine, don't judge it. The only thing is, if you only have 20 people, and 10 people are like the subtle, never stopping going on dances, and 10 people are the let's take a drink and not making a fuss dances, that is difficult to have these 20 people in the room. So I was very happy that the tango community in its whole, the global tango world, grew, because that made it possible to have diversification. We had tango salons that were more focused on the subtle salon dancing. We had tango salons where they were more focused on open nuevo dancing, which, by the way, is not a label that should be framed. Nuevo dancing can also be very subtle. The only thing is, it seems that nuevo and modern dance is bigger. Doesn't have to be, huh? But okay, this is also how things grow. And I also know salon dancers who are very subtle in shape, but do not connect at all. So for me, there's a different level to it. That makes me sometimes very sad when people do things only from the shape and not from what they really want to do. But there we are. We have a lovely tango community in the whole global world. And we were there with these milongas and afternoons that ever lasted. And even in Argentina, in the newspaper, they said there is a captain on a ship in Europe who dances tango for the whole weekend. There were articles of people in Buenos Aires writing about it, because in Buenos Aires at that moment there were milongas and bailes. They started late at 10 o'clock, they finished late, 6, 7, 8 hours. That was the maximum. But even there, the best tango was danced later on, not in the first nervous hours. For me, huh? For me. So that was interesting to me to see that people there would do that, but they can choose. Meanwhile, in Buenos Aires, the tango grew as well. So you saw more tango communities, local communities popping up in every barrio. Old people still, huh? Until the mid 90s, it was only old people who restarted their tango. The young people were like, no, 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 this is just for old people. But okay, so we saw more and more things happening, but the whole weekend dancing, that was something new. But on the other hand, in Buenos Aires, if you wanted to dance, you could choose at that moment 2 or 3 milongas per day. So you could shape your own weekends if you wanted to. In Europe, that was not possible at that moment. So that's why I organized the weekends, so that people actually reach different depths. And everybody knows, also you, that the last day sometimes is the best. But why is that? Because we feel more and more and more connected. But don't you fool yourself. There are also people who disconnect during the weekend because it's not their weekend. So everything can happen. But okay, if you have a successful weekend, then the last day might be the best. What do some people think? Okay, let's only organize the last day. But that's not how it works. For a last day, you need the first 2 days. And the first 2 days come also with maybe some imperfect moments. If you're a leader of a community, or if you're having that role and you can direct it, then you have to understand and get feedback. Lots of you are teachers. Feedback is your most important tool. And it's feedback to your own judgment. It's feedback asking people, and it's especially asking people who are not happy. If people are not happy in your community, you have choices. You can say, so be it. I'm very sorry that you're not happy, but there are other places where you can be happy, but I'm not going to compromise on this because this is my idea. Or you can take it into account, and maybe you can shape it in your community to give people a place for their needs as well. These are choices, and it's work. Leading or shaping a community is work. It's not just happening. So there I was. I saw that I was unique as a marathon. Oh, are you bored? Yeah, yeah, you. You had a late night. So if you shape your community, uh, then you can do that when you're on your own. easier than when you're with a whole team of people, because then you very often have to discuss it on forehand. So if it's possible to put your own idea into shaping or setting the standard for a community, it is a good thing. But on the other hand, you can also overly shape everything. It must be like this, it must be like that. If you come, you must wear your high heels. If you come, you can only dance. All these conditions are dangerous as well. So you always have to find balance. It's like that, like dancing. Finding balance between shaping, between using feedback, but at least acknowledge the feedback. That's important. And especially the feedback of people who are not experiencing it like you do. Because otherwise, you're only preaching for your own people. And you can learn a lot for the people who are on the edges, or maybe even on the other side. And at the same time, be there for them as well, connect to them. So when tango grew in the mid 90s, also tango in Argentina grew because young people thought it was hip to do it. So young people came in, and there was this second generation starting. We also went through the whole phase that the whole of Europe became more like a subtle dance community. The bigger shaped dancers were like the other way of tango, and the subtle shaped dances were gaining space in the community, in the European community. And that's nice because there's the crossing point where I thought I see the same quality as nowadays in Buenos Aires, because in Buenos Aires, in the social dancing, these fantastic old people who started in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, they were meanwhile dead. So even in Buenos Aires, they started to dance with the young people who also had to learn it. So it was very interesting. I thought now Europe becomes the old continent with the old knowledge of tango. So I also felt like at that moment, we were not unique anymore as El Corte. For 10 years, we were the only place in Europe to offer a whole weekend. So a lot of people started to connect and finding and feeding themselves on that feeling. But after 10 years, now we're talking about, let's say, the beginning of the 2000s, computer became more fashionable, and it was easier for people to connect with people abroad, and flying became much cheaper. The first time I flew to Buenos Aires, I paid about 10,000 euro compared to the nowadays prices. End of the 80s, it was 3,000 mark, or the or guilders, or let's say about $2,000. But that would be enormous nowadays, 40 years later. I had to save money for 3 years. But nowadays, people can go anywhere without thinking too much about it. It's still a lot of money. And talking about money, I also have my thought about that. When I offered my weekends and all the dancers in Alcorte, and you have to remember, I was one of the pioneers, so there was not a set expectation. I thought all the dancing should be for free because I don't want people to pay me 10 guilders and then sitting back and letting them being entertained. Because that is what I also saw around. People paid money, they stayed in the space, although they were not happy because they paid for it. And they started to blaming, hey, where do I have my $10? Where they became consumers. So I thought, I'm not going to let money being involved. I start with a class. You can pay me for the classes, for the drinks, of course, but not for the dancing itself. If you're not happy, you must have an escape. So if people say, hey, Eric, I'm not happy and this and this and that, I said, I see that. Take 2 hours, and if you don't want to come back, you get your entrance money back. It was very easy because it was zero. So that's, but they did go when they were not happy. And they came back after 2 hours because that is how it works. You have to create safe spaces, very important theme nowadays, but you also have to create an escape. And if you feel trapped by the amount of money that you paid, that can be a negative thing to a community. And besides that, what I saw even at the beginning of the community is that it attracted a lot of people who are also pioneer people who are into something new. So a lot of artists, musicians, people with money. And I thought, oh, people, don't make it already an elite. Let's create something that is affordable for everybody. It's still their own choice to come. And I'm very happy, and I'm still very happy that I don't charge for the dancing. And then people say, yeah, Eric, but it's easy. You have your own school. I tell you, the first 3 years when I didn't have my own school, I rented spaces for the social dancing, and I paid the rent, and the people didn't have to pay. I paid the rent from the teaching that I did. And that made it so easy accessible to people. They also started to come by and just watch, which is very important. I see so many places in the tango world where we have such a lot of fun, but actually we turn the back to the rest of the community that doesn't dance. And I think tango should also be part of a larger community. If we only organize things for ourselves, then there's a danger that we are depleting ourselves. That means that we are a community, but we're not refreshing it because we turn the back to the others. And if we start allowing, and also thinking about this, displaying tango in other places, then it's much better. And I'm not talking about weekend events, because this is another thing. During these early days, we had events on any day. So I remember taking the car and driving to Paris, which is about 4 hours from Nijmegen. I'm, by the way, from Nijmegen, the Netherlands. And we danced for an evening there. And then on Tuesday, we went to Amsterdam. And on Wednesday, we went to Brussels. There were all kinds of things during the week. And I know in the tango, in the big tango cities, it's still like that. But outside of the big tango cities, it's all concentrated on Saturday evening and Sunday during the day. And this is a pity because it becomes so, it's too easy. If you are willing to stick out your head, a big thing for young people, for instance, here in my city, is the wake-up party. I don't know if you know about that. Wake-up party start at 5 o'clock in the morning. You don't, yeah, you don't drink. You dance the whole time, and you go at 8 or 9 o'clock to your study or to your job. And there are 3 big parties here every day, attracting thousands of people in my city, of young people, because that's how they want to do it. They don't want to drink. They want to have party. They don't take drugs. They dance from 5 till 8, and then they go to their job. Wake up parties. And I've been doing this for more than 40, almost 40 years now in tango. And if I wanted to shift my beacons, but I don't want anymore, then I would say to people, organize these things. Berlin is a perfect setting to organize wake-up parties. If you are talking about community and refreshing community, start doing other things. But most of the people copy-paste. And that is, I think, also a slow killer for tango. You should be a bit more stubborn and maybe daring to shift the beacons and to come up with other ideas. The essence is that we want to connect. But don't forget, it's not about the shape. The essence is connecting and offering choices, Otherwise, people will label tango as this is the way it works. And there are so many ways that could work. Be open-minded, choose your own choices, but accept and embrace the others, connect to the others, sometimes visit the others. Even if you think, but it's not my cup of tea, don't be afraid of the others. That will grow tango as a big community. I'm almost done, and then you have time for questions. So now I'm still doing these things, and over the years I adjusted things because nowadays community needs their sleeping break, not us. When we have the marathon at New Year, I stopped calling it a marathon because we do a break. The people who still dance at 5 o'clock in the morning are the people who danced in the 80s and 90s. All the young people go to bed at 3 o'clock. That's very interesting. So we also decided, listen, as a team, we're not going to stay awake at 8 o'clock in the morning for 7 couples. We can, but if the needs are a bit different, okay, let's adjust to that, and that is also better for my team. Everybody is growing older, but not less enthusiastic for our beautiful dance of tango, and we're still continuing. And I'm getting older, and there might be a time, I already lost a few people on the way, because 40 years is a long time. there might be a time that I cannot physically do it anymore. And as most of you know, it's also a physical thing if you start doing more than just the dancing, but organizing, DJing, playing music, organizing the milongas or teaching. It's all physical. And if my body doesn't want anymore, then I have to stop. But what happens now? I'm curious because I want this beautiful building, which we own, to continue as a place where people can meet, as a tango home. And I always am very proud of that we created it like that, El Corte, full of art, full of people, but it can also be a blank canvas. It has a good and safe environment, a good floor, good music, and the right people, because that's the whole thing you need. These are the ingredients. For the rest, it's also a melting pot. And this melting pot can be different. El Corte has its own standard, although I didn't know that we had one. But sometimes I hear back this feedback from people in Buenos Aires. Oh, yeah, I danced with a person. I think he had or she had experiences in El Corte. This was like an El Corte dancer. I don't know what it means. Maybe you know. But I still will continue until I die. And I hope it will be Juliana. Yeah, you had that experience as well. I will continue, but I'm hoping that young people, new people, people who just started 10 years ago will continue the tango and keeping an open mind and shaping it so that tango can stay alive instead of being a museum copy of what we think it should be. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Amazing.
And I can tell for 2 days, 3 days, all these stories that I encountered, and I'm open for questions or curiosities. I just want to know till what time we have, Thomas.
Yes, so we need 10 minutes before the next session, so we have time basically for one question.
Okay.
But we didn't want to cut you short. Who wants to go?
Yes.
It's a scary responsibility then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Question is, I really enjoy your energy, and I think that's transmitted through members of your community as well. Whenever I speak to them, then they really transmit that. My question to you as an organizer, how do you protect your enthusiasm, your love for the dance, even in the really challenging times when everything's maybe not going right? Okay,
Absolutely.
The short version.
I tell you, I'm not an actor. I can act though, but I am fed by the open things that happen. And that is accepting actually also the mishaps that are part of anything you do. And a lot of people ask me that because when I teach, some people already have taken classes for 30 years, and I said, it's never the same with you. Although in the end, it's the same you say. You know, the essence for me is the same, but the shape is never the same. That is one of the things that keeps me alive. I'm not preparing what, for instance, a class should be. I'm just facilitating and I'm guarding some boundaries, but within these boundaries, I feel free. In a class sense, I have a good trained teaching ability, so I have a feeling for time management. I have a feeling for the whole group, because this is one of the dangers that you are thinking from yourself. If you're part of shaping a community, you have to be able to expand and to see that you're part of something bigger. And then you have different shells. The moment you understand that, you can be more fluent within it. You have the me shell. What do you think? What do you need? Then you have a few very close people. Then maybe you have a group of people that take classes. There are different needs. Then you have a school. But that school, and this is a big no-no, is also part of a bigger system. Maybe in the same city, there are 3 schools. In Nijmegen, in my city, and in Arnhem, it's a double city of altogether almost 1 million people. We have about 800 steady dancers and 8 big schools, organizations that teach. And I constantly let them visit each other, although one is more in the Nuevo, one is more in the complete Orthodox salon style. It's fine. Everything is fine. Make your choices, but meet. Do not turn the backs to each other. And that demands a lot of effort, because the very first reaction very often is that people say, no, 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 not that. And they don't want to even talk to it. And I think, come on. Let's embrace. We're talking about connection and embrace. That's the most important thing in everybody, also in the Nuevo and the bigger and the smaller and the subtle. It's all about connection. And then what you do as an organizer, as a community builder, is not to connect to the others, but being a protective, gated community. That is one of the biggest fears for me, for the Tango world, because I see more and more people getting their territory right. This is what I do, and the rest is bullshit. But the first time we danced tango, I hope that you had a similar experience. Wasn't it like, wow, everything is possible? And after 3 years, you say, but this is not good, and this is not good, and you can't dance to that. And you go, what is this? Find your own things, love it, share it with the others that love it as well, but do not judge the others that find other things. I think this is one of the key things to make it fresh, and making me wondering about other things. I see still other interpretations, which is enriching me. I'm not afraid. I feel enriched. That is keeping me fresh.
Thank you. Amazing. So nice to see you, Eric, again. So I just want to very briefly to add, when I met Eric 25 years ago, my first impression of him, I thought, wow, this person has such a huge awareness. He's so wise and at the same time so embodied in that awareness. And the light and the magic that he brought to El Corte and to people who meet him, it is an energy vibration, and he's still got it. Thank you so much. We need to prepare for the next session.
I wish you such a lot of fun, and I'm thanking you for being together, and let's hope it makes an inspirational difference for the future of tango. It's important that we grow and that we're not sticking to the same old, same old. So I wish you a lot of fun. I'm very sorry that I'm not there because it's my holiday time. And one of the things to keep fresh, coming back to the question, is that I really appreciate my holidays without any obligations. This is already an exception that I said at 11 o'clock I will be here, but my working time starts again from the end of September. So until that time, I might show up tomorrow for one of the sessions, but I wish you a lot of fun and keep me updated on any new developments. Bye-bye, everybody.
We will. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you so much.